I wake up and have a cup of coffee every day at 5 in the morning. And by 6 or 5:30, I'm in the field harvesting or fertilizing, depending on the weather. The first thing I look at is the day's weather. If it's very cold, cloudy, if I can see the sun rays through the clouds. That way, I know what I have to do that day. The radio is my companion, and I listen every day. It's a constant companion. I am never without a radio.
Don Carlos será quien orgullosamente abra este desfile de silleteros.
I like to stay informed of what's happening in the country and the world, because that's an important part of being human, being aware of what is happening around you. I like knowing what is happening in my country first. As you can see, I started working with flowers ever since I had use of reason. From very early in my life, I learned this from my parents. Ever since I was a child, I worked alongside my father until he died in the flower plantations, and I began to love the cultivation of flowers. And I have always said that it is not like you can make a whole lot of money growing flowers, but you can make a living from it, and you don't have to work for someone else. Rather, it's always good to work for yourself. Flowers are a very fruitful crop because you can always sell them 3 or 4 times a week. But it's a crop where you have to be very consistent because some plants take longer to produce than others. But I would say that I have loved flowers for a long time, since I was at least 8 years old.
Por la suplementación diaria. Para ellos, nuestro más cordial agradecimiento y nuestras más sinceras felicitaciones por su compromiso.
My father lived through some tough times. Back then, they only lived off flowers. And they had to carry them on their backs, on saddles or silletas, to Medellin. They would carry them out of here, which was very arduous work. But then they started building roads. At first, it was very, very difficult. The first people who settled here to plant flowers and sell them had a very hard time. For us that live in these modern times, now we have roads going to the villages. And the work, well, it's a little easier because the flower merchants can now drive up to our houses and buy the flowers right here. So as time has passed and progress is spreading to these regions, it's much easier to work and make a living at this.
For a lot of farmers, working with flowers is more than a job. It's a profession. Throughout history, This tradition has been carried on through the generations. Children, adults, seniors, everyone takes part in this ritual. Despite the inequalities and deprivations they've been subjected to, many refuse to abandon their lands. Seeing them in full bloom is the measure of their wealth. There are some who no longer work flowers because they don't generate the same income as before. They are no longer profitable. But for Orlando, this is not an option. His flowers are his life strategy. Every day he learns from every day is a new story. The Colombian countryside has a great potential for generating wealth, but it can only be realized when farmers can benefit from improved benefits and recognition.
The longer you work in the field that you work with flowers, the more tricks you learn. And also, the plant itself, let's say, she can teach you. You plant it, and when you spot a disease, you start to research. Where does it come from? What causes it? That's when you start to learn. Oh, I cut it when I shouldn't have. Or I fertilized with the wrong product. Those are the secrets that no one will teach you in any school or in any university. Those are things that you learn from the plants themselves. Nature will teach you what she needs, what you need to apply or don't need to apply, when to harvest, etc. Those are very basic teachings.
We will return after these messages. It's 7:15 a.m. Colombia, the country in South America, grows the greatest variety of flowers in the world. It's an industry composed of growers, suppliers, and businessmen. The majority of the cultivation takes place in the high plains around Bogota, with 82% market share, while 12% of the crop is harvested in the areas surrounding the Rio Negro Valley. There is an additional 6% that is grown in small plantations in the Cauca Valley in the coffee-growing region, and some along the Cauca. These numbers were tabulated by social development researchers who evaluated life strategies of flower farmers, their strategies for obtaining economic sustenance, and their strategies for guaranteeing coverage of basic life necessities and improving their family's quality of life. 7:18 a.m. Now, with more economic news from around the country, we'll be right back.
Something I worry about is the quality of life here in Colombia, especially in the healthcare sector. I have been to many countries, even in countries whose economies is not as strong as Colombia's. You find that the government subsidizes education for the youth and healthcare for the population. But here, those are the areas where the government is weakest. A lot of people have stopped growing flowers because they say it's not as profitable as before, that they can't make any money doing it. But you can't abandon a tradition just because the plants get sick often. Because something else you learn here is that as the world evolves alongside humanity, and just as new diseases arise in humans, so do new diseases arise for plants. So then let's say, we the farmers that grow the flowers have to learn to play the role of scientists. We have to be on the lookout for new diseases. It can't just be agronomists in a university lab looking for diseases. The agronomists have to come out to the field to make observations up close. We show it to them, and then they also start their research into the origins of the disease. Also, you can't just learn from the plants and not put it into practice, because things are not so easy, so you have to have a process, but it's always great to learn something new. For example, I'm one of those people that when I learn something that works in the field, I don't keep it to myself, but instead, I always share it with my friends, neighbors, and fellow cultivators. You have to cut them very early, up until 7 in the morning, or very late in the afternoon or early evening. It's the only way, because you shouldn't harvest before 4 p.m. You shouldn't cut them, as is the case with lilies. They are flowers that, if you want the plantation to last, you should not harvest them when the plant is hot. People from all over admires the flowers that we grow, but they don't know much about the process and about the way the plant should be maintained, or how they're harvested. You also can't start to cultivate the land and plant flowers if you're not sure that you're going to have a good, productive harvest.
More than just a business, flowers are a tradition. Orlando Grajale is a well-known silletera who has dedicated 31 years of his life to this beautiful festivity. A people's love of their land and their culture is reflected in every flower, in every minute they dedicate to making their silleta. They forget about the fatigue of carrying their creations on their backs, since the applause, gratitude, and recognition makes their heart vibrate with emotion. The essence of being a silletero is to feel the proximity to the region, to not lose the memory of their history. And Orlando is very clear about this, since he is one of the few who still cultivates flowers that are native to the region, flowers that adorn the landscapes of Santa Elena.
I'm very sure of this. All around Santa Elena, these kinds of flowers are going extinct. It makes me very sad to talk about this, but since the native flowers don't fetch a very high price at market, people don't like to plant them because their prices are low. So people are foregoing these flowers. And that's why I guess some people tell me I'm not rich because I'm dumb, but I tell them that I'm keeping alive a tradition taught to me by my ancestors. And I am grateful to these flowers because it is thanks to them that I have made a living, raised my children, traveled, and gotten to know the world. So I'm always grateful for that. And to say that life has never given me anything is wrong, because as long as we have our health in our lives, we have a lot. And anything beyond that is just icing on the cake. People often say that we farmers have strange habits and customs, and say that some of the things we do in our crops are old habits or superstitions. But it's not. Why? Because we observe our plants. They don't talk, but they tell us what works for them and what doesn't.
La vida, lo que los ancestros nos enseñaron siempre.
We are a people that value the life lessons taught by our ancestors, to have respect for one another, and also to respect the quality of everyone's work.
Yo tengo una vida muy sana y no pierdo.
I live a healthy life and I don't waste time. Either I am working or playing the guitar. While I'm awake, I remain active.
Quisiera decirte que te quiero, como nadie en la vida lo haya dicho. Voy a buscar palabras en el cielo, de las que dice Dios allá en el infinito. Yo quisiera besarte de otro modo y llevarte un amor desconocido. Yo quisiera decirte no sé cómo y conocer por fin tu amor que es tan bonito. Yo considero que
I have always believed that in life, no human being can say that they have everything.
nunca en la vida ningún ser humano para mí lo tiene todo. Porque
Because even when someone says, I have everything because I have a lot of money, we all are always missing something. We will always have needs, even if we have a lot of money or resources. We need a lot of things. The farmers here in Santa Elena, we need a lot of support. Why? Because times have been changing.
nosotros, por ejemplo, como le digo, esta parte
Take us, for example. As I was saying, this way of cultivating flowers, following the tradition that dates back to the times when the first flower seeds arrived in this area, that way has evolved a great deal, since now you have a great variety of flowers and seeds that are not native to the area.
se ha evolucionado mucho en las flores porque hay mucha variedad de flores diferentes, de semillas, no que se producen acá.
So I don't know. They do produce then, but they are hard to harvest because of the costs, because they require greenhouses and you have to build many of them, or they have water issues. It's best to work with a little bit and harvest as you go along, and not become overly ambitious.
Comiendo y no, pues, no ser ambicioso en la vida. Ambicioso sí, en la forma de que voy a mantenerme al menos, de que cuando me dan ganas de irme a hacerme un paseo.
Ambition is okay when, for example, I want to go travel somewhere for fun or go eat out somewhere. I can afford to do it. But not the kind of ambition where I go into debt because I'm going to make a lot of money, but I won't be able to sleep because that money is not mine.
Y de ahí en adelante, todo lo que hagamos es ganancia.
Anything beyond that is pure profit, as I say. So one should not undervalue the gifts God gave to us, the opportunities, the greatness of what I have learned, our parents' teachings.
Me dejaron en el mundo con muy poquito, no.
They left me in the world with very little. They brought me into this world with very little, but I have lived a lot off that little bit. I have raised my family.
Yo quisiera que perdiera la tradición de esta región.
And that is one of the traditions I hope that this area never loses. I hope we never stop cultivating flowers just because we're looking to make money. It's very nice to have money and travel the world, but what about tranquility and tradition? Those are beautiful things.
De pronto más adelante,
Maybe later on, it would have to happen that we would lose our entire crop.
la producción del todo para uno invertir en otra cosa diferente. Pero
And then we'd have to invest in something else. But God is great. And God will give us the peace of mind and means to work it out so that this does not disappear.
We leave the countryside behind. Along, it's the smells, sounds, sensations, and emotions. Tomorrow, new dreams will come, along with the hope of being able to carry on a tradition that, with sacrifice and hard work, will yield the expected harvest. It's 8:30 a.m. That's all for today, and we hope you join us for our next program. We wish you a good morning and sign off with this song. Goodbye.
Has hallado en mis ojos la tristeza de no haberte encontrado desde niño. Siempre tuve tu nombre en mi cabeza. Será porque nací pensando en tu cariño. Yo quisiera besarte de otro modo, enseñarte un amor desconocido. Yo quisiera decir que no sé cómo.